The legend starts with a trick of perspective. Camp Crystal Lake fills with screams and gore, but Jason Voorhees has nothing to do with it. Every throat cut, every knife in the dark, comes from Pamela Voorhees. Jason exists here only as a shadow in memory, the drowned boy who fuels his mother's rage. The result is the one film in the series where Jason kills no one. His silence is total, his body count locked at 0. What begins as his mother's vendetta will become his eternal slaughter. But in this first chapter, he waits unseen. Friday the 13th. A new beginning uses the legend of Jason Voorhees to build fear, but he never strikes. The mask appears, the shadow of the killer looms, yet Jason himself does not kill anyone. All 17 murders are committed by Roy Burns, a grief-stricken paramedic taking revenge for his son's death. To mislead the victims and audience, Roy wears Jason's iconic mask during several attacks, creating the illusion that the legendary killer has returned. Jason exists only in hallucinations and flashbacks, never in the act of murder. The film's terror comes from the idea of Jason, not his reality. And the twist revealing Roy as the killer makes the story even more interesting. The sack-headed Jason steps out of legend and into reality, claiming 10 lives. His violence is clumsy, but it's hungry. He drives spears through lovers in their bed. He slashes throats, impales, and hacks with desperate energy. This is Jason before immortality. Still human, still flawed, but relentless. The mask isn't his yet, but the rage is. 10 corpses announce his true arrival, and the legend of the boy in the lake becomes the terror of the man in the woods. Here, the legend locks into place. The hockey mask makes its first appearance, sealing Jason's identity forever. With the mask comes confidence, and with confidence comes carnage. 13 bodies stack up, and the brutality feels raw, almost unrefined, like Jason is discovering his full potential for the first time. The kills are blunt instruments of rage. Spears ram through torsos, knives slice with unflinching rhythm, bare hands crush windpipes until bones snap. Victims try to run, hide, or fight, but Jason tears through them with the focus of an executioner learning to love the craft. What makes these deaths resonate isn't just the number, but the cultural weight. This is the film where Jason stopped being a figure in the shadows and became a permanent face of terror. Every one of those 13 corpses marks the rise of the hockey mask as horror's most recognizable symbol. The word final meant nothing, but the slaughter felt absolute. Jason sweeps through this chapter like a storm made of knives and rage, tallying 13 corpses along the way. The film's texture is pure doom. Cabins turn into traps, windows explode with sudden violence, and the woods feel more like a graveyard than a campsite. Jason takes no breaks. Teenagers sliced apart at parties, families reduced to silence in their living rooms, strangers torn down as if they'd wandered into his personal hunting ground. There's no randomness here. Every death feels like retribution for sins against his memory. And then comes Tommy Jarvis, a child, clever and desperate, who dares to fight him. Jason takes blow after blow, and for once the mask slips. Not the hockey mask, but the aura of invincibility. Before that final blade hits his skull, Jason leaves behind 13 wrecked lives, a legacy of gore too thick to ignore. For many, this remains his most terrifying rampage, because it feels both unstoppable and personal, like revenge carried out in the flesh. A group of young adults heads to Crystal Lake for a weekend getaway. They laugh, drink, and explore, unaware that Jason Voorhees, the legendary killer of the area, is watching. Jason is no longer slow. He moves with deadly precision. One by one, The campers wander into the woods or split from the group, and Jason strikes without hesitation. He kills 2 teenagers first, then moves on to others who get separated or try to investigate strange noises. Friends vanish while searching for each other, and even strong or smart members of the group cannot escape. Jason uses knives, axes, and sheer brute force. The forest becomes a hunting ground, filled with screams and blood. By the end, 14 people have died, leaving Jason as the unstoppable, terrifying master of Crystal Lake, a predator who strikes with cold, unrelenting violence. Keep watching. Each film takes Jason further into the abyss. The count never stops, it only grows. This Jason is not clean flesh and bone. He's a walking corpse with ribs jutting out, a spine visible through rotting skin, and a hockey mask fused into his decayed skull. It's his most monstrous form, and the body count mirrors that savagery. 15 victims fall, their deaths dripping with creativity and cruelty. The sleeping bag kill defines the movie. He slams a zipped-up victim against a tree until silence falls. A death so blunt and brutal, it remains iconic decades later. Elsewhere, a man is fed to a spinning blade, another torn apart in a flurry of violent improvisation. Even a birthday celebration becomes a slaughterhouse, balloons popping alongside screams as Jason cuts down anyone in reach. But this entry dares to give him a real opponent. A girl with psychic powers pushes back, hurling objects, sparking fire, and slowing Jason's advance. For once, his rampage isn't unchecked. The body count halts at 15, not because Jason runs out of rage, but because someone finally has the power to fight him on his level. It's a stalemate drenched in gore, unforgettable for the savagery rather than the number. Lightning tears open Jason's grave, and what crawls out is no longer human. 18 die beneath his undead strength. He rips a man's heart out with his bare hand. He slams heads into tree trunks with casual force. He cuts through police, campers, and paintball players without effort. The deaths feel mechanical, as if murder has become his only programming. Jason doesn't stalk anymore. He advances like a corpse that cannot be stopped, stacking bodies until the lake drowns him again. The title promised a city drowning in blood, streets and subways alive with screams. Instead, Jason is trapped on a cruise ship for most of the story, turning corridors and cabins into a maze of death. Still, 18 people die at his hands, each one a brutal reminder that escape is impossible. A boxer is one of the first to fall, decapitated with a single crushing punch. He collapses on the rooftop, his body discarded like trash. Other passengers die in equally merciless ways. A teacher is beaten to death in a hallway, a young couple is poisoned in champagne, and a pair of teens drown in filthy water below the deck. Every death is quick, violent, and precise, showing Jason's unrelenting hunger for slaughter. When he finally reaches New York, the mood turns darker. Jason stalks rain-slick alleys, slipping between shadows as terrified pedestrians hide and flee. He prowls subway cars, dragging victims into corners and leaving their screams to echo through tunnels. On the streets, he stares at Times Square, a silent predator in the neon glow. Yet the full massacre never arrives. No mobs, no police intervention, no skyscraper carnage, only fleeting glimpses of what the city could have lost. Even with 18 dead, the film leaves a sense of restrained violence. Jason kills teachers, tourists, rowdy teenagers, and workers, each death precise, brutal, and calculated. The city remains intact, but Jason's victims are proof of the terror he can bring when confined. The kill count is solid, but the unrealized carnage in Manhattan haunts the film more than the bodies themselves. When two legends meet, bodies fall, and Jason proves reality bites harder than dreams. 18 lives end under his machete, each one precise, each one brutal. Freddy may haunt nightmares, but Jason strikes in the waking world, unstoppable and methodical. The bloodiest sequence erupts at the rave. Teenagers stumble through the dark field, half drunk and laughing, unaware the killer is watching. Jason swings with the force of a guillotine. A boy clutching a beer bottle is sliced in the throat mid-dance, his body collapsing against a speaker. A pair of girls fleeing the strobes are impaled on metal fence posts, their screams echoing in the night. Others are thrown into piles of debris, struck until bones snap, their blood soaking the grass and reflecting the strobe lights. Freddy manipulates dreams, pulling some victims into visions, but Jason ignores the illusions. He hunts, he strikes, he kills. Teachers, partygoers, and curious onlookers alike fall in waves. By the end, 18 corpses lie in his wake, a grim tally proving that when reality meets the mask, only one killer walks away. In this chapter, Jason's body is no longer his own. His soul leaps from one host to another, turning ordinary people into instruments of death. Each possession spreads his rage, and 19 lives are claimed, though not all by his hands directly. Some deaths feel like echoes of his power, bodies destroyed while the killer himself is absent. The violence is extreme. A diner becomes a war zone, patrons gutted, burned, and crushed in a frenzy of chaos. Explosions tear through rooms, faces melt under heat, and limbs are shredded with an excess only the early 90s dared. Workers, students, and bystanders alike fall in gruesome ways. But Jason is often unseen, a spectral hand guiding the carnage. When he finally returns in his true form, the dread sharpens. He moves with brutal force, ripping victims apart, smashing bodies against walls, and dragging the unlucky into the shadows. By the end, 19 corpses mark his reign of terror. But the film feels like an experiment. Violent, inventive, yet strangely diluted, as though another creature wore Jason's mask and performed the killings in his name. No woods, no cabins, no crystal lake. Instead, silence in the stars. Jason X is absurd on paper, but feral in execution. 21 people die at Jason's hands, the largest single kill count in his entire run. It begins on Earth, but once he's cryogenically frozen and woken up centuries later aboard a spaceship, the massacre evolves into something unearthly. Jason slices through squads of space marines like they're paper, tears open scientists and students, and litters the halls of the ship with bodies. The setting doesn't soften him, it makes him worse. Then comes the transformation. Nanotechnology repairs his shredded body and creates Uber Jason, a metal-skinned juggernaut immune to pain, glowing eyes fixed on endless slaughter. The highlight remains the liquid nitrogen kill. He plunges a victim's head into a tank, freezes it solid, and shatters it on the counter. It's science fiction fused with sadism. And then there's the infamous holodeck scene, where he batters simulated campers inside their sleeping bags. Every death piles into the record book, pushing his body count to 21. Critics laughed, but the numbers didn't. Jason X proved that no matter the time, no matter the setting, Jason doesn't adapt to the world. The world bends around him, and then it breaks. The numbers tell the story. 159 bodies total. Jason Voorhees is not a villain with motive or reason, but an endless executioner who defines terror through volume. The mask endures. The terror never fades. To witness more of horror's deadliest legends, like and subscribe. Step deeper into the shadow that never dies.